Great. And I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Penny.
Hey, I had to press got it on there. I'm Penny. I used to drink a lot and I don't drink anymore. Actually, I haven't had a drink in almost 55 years. And I came to AA at the age of 30, the mother of 7. I had children from 22 months to 9 years. And I really believed I couldn't do anything right. We had moved and moved and moved. And finally landed here in Virginia. And things weren't any different. And it dawned on me that maybe it was me, maybe I needed to change. We had had all kinds of problems. We had had terrible financial problems, including a bankruptcy. We had had just life was a mess. And we came to Virginia, and within 30 days, I knew it wasn't getting any better. And my drinking career was one of the first 5 years I drank on occasion. The second 5 years, I created occasions. And the third 5 years, every day was an occasion. And I went through all the things of maybe if we don't keep booze in the house, we just went out more. And if we stopped going out, we just got drunk at home. So there was a lot of puking, a lot of wretched hangovers. And the only change I knew of that I could make was to not drink anymore. And I knew I couldn't do that by myself because there were 2 other adults in the house who drank. And so I ended up calling AA. And the 2 things that made a huge difference to me, when the gal told me if I was having trouble, say a little prayer, I very openly told her, I don't pray, I'm an atheist. And she said, well, that's all right, dear. And she said, just take what you need from this program and leave the rest. And then she said, I asked her, I don't want to be the person I am today, just not drinking because I'm miserable. And I don't want to go back to the person I was because that's the person that needed the alcohol. Can you end up being something totally different? And she said, never forget this in her Southern accent. She said, Dia, AA is an individual program, and each individual gets out of it exactly what they need. And that sold me. So 2 ladies came to call on me, and I couldn't believe they hadn't had a drink, one of them in 8 months and the other one in a couple years. And it took me to a meeting that night. And it was a relief. I was relieved. I was relieved that I was finally doing something about a problem that I had known I had had for a long time. And I can remember people saying, if you're here, you're probably 5 years late. And that made sense to me. The very first step meeting I went to was on step 10. And because it didn't have God in it, I knew that I could put it to practice. But the thing that struck me most about it was the spiritual axiom that whenever we're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with us. And I thought I was wrong all the time. I thought everything was wrong with me. So I started trying to put that into practice. And I discovered several things. I discovered, number one, that a spiritual axiom is nothing more than looking for a change of principle, of attitude, not necessarily a change of doing what I'm doing, but how I'm doing it. What's my attitude? And that was wild. About the same time, and this was about 3 weeks into the program, about the same time, I was in a meeting on step 6 and 7. And somebody there talked about the principles of being a loving person. And they described it as being patient, kind, courteous, generous, good-tempered, unselfish, with guilelessness, sincerity, and humility. And they made the statement that if they were practicing, that the principles were practicable, and that if they were practicing being patient, they would be less impatient. And if they were practicing being kind, they would be less unkind, less sarcastic. So I could understand that. That made sense to me. So then what I had the ideals of change, because I wasn't a kind person. I thought sarcasm showed intellect and wit. And it didn't. It was hurtful. So I worked very hard at trying to be different, trying to be less selfish, trying to be good-tempered, trying to be to look for the good in others. And I can remember people constantly saying that. I have a very critical sense in me, and I've always had it. And it's partly an analytical mind. And, I could analyze the hell out of anything. And they kept saying, utilize, don't analyze. And I was nuts. I thought that's an analogy in and of itself. And I did the best I could. I didn't drink. And I tried very hard to be a loving person. And I had a lot of people around me to try and be a loving person with. And that as time went by, good things started to happen. And I don't mean we struck the lottery, but little things started to happen. I ran into a woman at an AA meeting, and she said, "You know how I got a hold of my finances?" And I said, "How?" And she said, "Somebody told me to stop spending money I didn't have, buying things I didn't need to impress people I didn't like." And I thought that was genius. And I stopped doing it and got a hold of finances. So each little thing that I tried to do that was different, the benefits were way outweighed the effort. And in time, things started changing. I had grown up with being told that if it isn't perfect, it isn't any good. You know, if you can't do it right, don't bother doing it at all. And so in time, I wasn't doing much of anything. And I figured, you know, you can't do anything right. And as time went on in sobriety, instead of saying, "I can't," I started saying, "I'll try." And it was amazing, some of the things that happened in those first 10, 15 years. I can remember trying to sew. And this woman told me that she would help me. And she called me up one day and she said, "How's the skirt coming?" And I told her, I said, "Well, the seam's not perfectly straight." And she said, "Well, dear, isn't it on the inside?" And I went, "Oh, doesn't matter. Nobody sees that." And in time, making clothes for kids and myself, I ended up 20 or so years later making my all three daughters' wedding gowns and bridesmaids' dresses. I came across bird carving, and I decided I was going to try to do bird carving. My husband and I love being nomads, and we'd go to a lot of craft shows, and we had come across realistic bird carving, and I wanted to try that. So I did. And people in AA were crazy. They kept saying, "You got to have a goal. I mean, what's the purpose of this? I mean, this is silly, Penny." And so I tried to figure out what the most outrageous goal could be. And I said, "Okay, I want to have a bird in a museum in 5 years," which is crazy. But it happened in less than 5 years. It actually happened in less than 4 years. I ended up taking over 100 awards with bird carvings the first 6 or 7 years I carved. And that was a 15-year career that I loved until I had to stop to take care of a sick and dying husband. AA was my support in taking care of a sick and dying husband. They were wonderful. one of my husband's pigeons said, "What can I do?" And I said, "I really don't know." He said, "How about if I come over on Mondays and you can go to a meeting and to lunch with your friends?" And I said, "Okay." And that man had no car and he walked 2 miles to my house. Rain, snow, sleet, didn't matter the weather. Every Monday for 18 months. To help with my husband. People in AA were unbelievably supportive. I went to Alzheimer's support group and I went to the Parkinson's support group, and they weren't worth a damn. And people asked me why I felt that way, and I said, because AA is just the granddaddy of support groups. They know what they're doing. They know what to say when I say I get angry. They say I'd be angry too. People in AA just intuitively know when I was going through something and needed help. Emotional support more than anything. And I was always the kind of person who picked emotionally unavailable people in my life. And I don't know why that was. It just was. But I did that. And it was hard to learn to accept help because of that. But I did. I was able to follow directions. And I was able to take care of a sick man. And that was a gift beyond belief. Since then, and it's been 22 years since then, I have just lived an unbelievable life. I never thought that living alone would be wonderful, but it really is. And I joke about it a lot in AA because I say, it's a great way for a self-centered person to live. They don't have to cater to anybody. There's no more the question coming at you, what's for dinner? Will you sew that button on my shirt? So there are advantages to every stage of life and every stage of sobriety. And I look for those today. I look for the good things that I have. I have 2 beautiful cats. And they're great. And my life is calm. And I enjoy going to my home group out at Pine Grove every Saturday night. It's 40 miles west of me. It's a beautiful drive. We have a group that gets together for dinner and go to an 8:30 meeting. And that has been my practice on Saturday night for over 50 years. Does this work? Yes. I'm not worried about people talking about spiritual in AA. because I believe that a spiritual awakening is nothing more than the awakening of the spirit within me. And with each change that I made, there was an awakening of my spirit. Each positive change. I've made mistakes, believe me. But I can forgive myself. I can accept my humanness. And that's a gift. I would have probably never gotten that if I hadn't been a drunk. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the rest of the meeting, and I hope you'll sort of direct things toward the 10th step.